Morning settles gently over the Carolina foothills, its pale mist crawling across the valleys like a living veil. Pines stand motionless in the quiet dawn, their silhouettes rising through the fog as if guarding secrets too old to name. Beneath this hushed canopy lie earthen mounds, smooth, symmetrical, and strangely deliberate, emerging from the forest floor in shapes that defy erosion and time. Travelers who wander too close speak of an eerie stillness, a sense that the ground itself is listening. Locals warn, in voices lowered by generations of caution, never to disturb the mounds. The earth remembers, they say. And it does not forget those who trespass. To the scientific world, these formations are officially labeled simple cultural sites, remnants of early inhabitants who shaped the land for ceremonial or communal purposes. Yet the experts who make these claims do so with unsettling hesitation. None can agree on the true age of the mounds. Excavations yield artifacts far younger than the soil layers beneath them. Carbon dating produces ranges so wide they border on impossible. And then there is the shape, precise geometric outlines aligned with solar events and star paths no early Carolina culture is known to have tracked with such accuracy. The closer researchers look, the more questions rise from the earth like quiet whispers. Local traditions, however, paint a different story, one of travelers who vanish after digging too deeply, of lights drifting above the mounds on moonless nights, of songs that seem to hum through the soil after heavy rain. Elders say the formations were built by those who walked before memory, a people who left no bones, no tools, no trace except these silent monuments drawn perfectly against the heavens. Some believe the mounds mark boundaries. Others claim they hide something waiting to be unearthed. As evidence grows stranger, astronomical alignments, unexplained subsurface structures, anomalies in magnetic readings, the tension sharpens between what science asserts and what the land suggests. These mounds should not exist in their current form, not at this age, and certainly not with such precision. Yet here they stand, quiet but defiant, challenging every accepted timeline. And so the question deepens, echoing through the foothills like a breath beneath the soil, who built these ancient mounds, and why do they appear centuries older than any known inhabitants? What hides beneath the earth may rewrite everything we believe about early America. Long before colonial borders and modern towns claimed the land, North Carolina existed as a crossroads of prehistory, a place shaped by migrations, extinctions, and cultures that rose and disappeared long before written memory. More than 12,000 years ago, Paleo-Indians traveled through these hills, following game herds across a landscape still recovering from glacial retreat. They left behind stone points, scattered campsites, and faint traces of their movement. Yet despite decades of study, archaeologists still struggle to map a continuous timeline. Entire centuries vanish from the record, replaced by isolated artifacts without cultural context, as if whole peoples lived and died between the gaps without leaving a narrative behind. As time advanced, early mound building groups began shaping the southeastern landscape, crafting ceremonial structures that aligned with seasonal cycles and celestial events. But here in the Carolina Piedmont, the chronology fractures again. Some earthworks appear to predate known mound cultures by centuries. Others display architectural patterns inconsistent with the peoples believed to inhabit the region at the time. Soil cores pulled from several mounds reveal layers older than the artifacts found above them, an inversion so contradictory that researchers quietly debate whether the sites were built atop even earlier, erased foundations. Indigenous oral traditions add another dimension entirely. The Cherokee speak of the Anikatani, a powerful and ancient group said to possess knowledge of the stars. The Catawba and Lumbee tell stories of the first people, earth shapers who molded the land and marked the sky before vanishing into the hills. Some legends reference beings who watched from the dark spaces between the stars, and taught early humans the rhythms of the sun and moon. These tales, often dismissed as symbolic myth, echo eerily across tribes that had no direct cultural connection, suggesting a shared memory deeper than recorded history. Yet the mounds scattered across North Carolina refuse to align neatly with either tradition or science. Their geometries mirror patterns found in later Mississippian cities like Cahokia, but their ages challenge that lineage entirely. Soil analysis places some structures thousands of years earlier than the rise of the Mississippian world, implying the knowledge of mound building, and perhaps the astronomical calculations behind it, originated here long before it flourished elsewhere. Their precision suggests intentional design, alignments with solstices, star clusters, and lunar standstills that early documented cultures should not have possessed the expertise to track. This contradiction pushes researchers toward an unsettling hypothesis, that before Cahokia's plazas, before the Mississippian mound complexes, before the tribes whose histories are traced today, there may have been another civilization in the Carolinas. A culture so ancient it slipped beneath the reach of archaeology. A people whose monuments still shape the forests, whose knowledge carved itself into the earth long before recognizable tribes inherited the land. Official timelines avoid this conclusion. It appends too many assumptions, rewrites too much of early American history. Yet the evidence whispers its own story. The mounds are older than they should be, more precise than they should be, and far too deliberate to be dismissed as simple ceremonial sites. If these structures belong to a forgotten civilization, then North Carolina is not just a landscape of deep time, it is a cradle of mysteries older than history itself. The earliest attempts to understand North Carolina's mysterious mounds began in the late 1800s, when curiosity, ambition, and a rush of frontier-era science pushed researchers into the Carolina backwoods with shovels, notebooks, and an unshakable belief that the land still held forgotten stories. What they uncovered during those first excavations astonished them, and, in time, threatened the boundaries of accepted history so profoundly that many of the discoveries were quietly buried along with the mounds themselves. Early journals describe teams digging into what they expected to be simple burial sites or refuse heaps left by documented tribes. Instead, they found artifacts unlike anything catalogued in the southeastern archaeological record. Ceramic surface that bore no resemblance to Catawba or Cherokee pottery, smooth vessels etched with spiraling geometric motifs that matched neither regional tools nor known artistic traditions. Stone implements carved from materials not native to the Carolinas appeared beside them, including obsidian blades whose origins pointed to distant lands far beyond prehistoric trade routes. Some excavation notes even mention copper ornaments crafted with a technique that should not have existed in the region at that time. More unsettling were the structural discoveries. Several journals reference giant earth chambers, vast interior rooms shaped beneath the mounds using engineering that baffled early scholars. These chambers display triangular vaulting, unusual acoustics, and doorway placements aligned perfectly with the winter and summer solstices. One researcher, writing in 1892, remarked that the builders showed a mastery of earth architecture more sophisticated than any tribe recorded in this part of the continent. Another described standing inside a chamber during sunset and watching a beam of light strike a carved stone panel, as though the structure itself marked the turning of the year. Then came the skeletal remains, anomalous enough to spark controversy even among the open-minded scholars of the era. Some skeletons were unusually tall, others showed cranial features that defied regional anthropological profiles. A few had elongated skulls that researchers at the time hesitantly compared to Old World specimens. No cultural explanation fit neatly. Some proposed an unknown tribe. Others speculated about ancient migrations predating recognized movements into North America. But by the early 1900s, enthusiasm shifted to discomfort. As academic institutions formalized their archaeological standards, the early findings were branded misinterpretations, incorrect measurements, or exaggerations by untrained observers. Many of the original artifacts were quietly relocated into museum storage, where records note their presence for a few years, before abruptly ending. Boxes listed in catalogs vanished without transfer forms. Skeletons mentioned in the earliest reports reappeared labeled simply as miscellaneous remains, or disappeared entirely. Earth chamber diagrams were archived, then quietly removed during later audits. Modern institutions insist the early researchers were mistaken, victims of poor methodology or the imaginative spirit of their era. Yet their journals paint a consistent, meticulously detailed picture of findings that do not match any known cultural timeline. The mounds revealed secrets once, secret scholars were eager to explore, until those secrets grew too large, too disruptive, too capable of rewriting the origin story of the region. What those first excavators found may have been the closest glimpse into the truth of the Carolina Mounds. And the fact that so much of it vanished from public record only deepens the question that still lingers today: what did they uncover that someone later decided we were not meant to know? From the moment modern science turned its instruments toward the Carolina Mounds, the Earth seemed determined to guard its secrets. What began as a simple effort to refine early excavation data quickly spiraled into a labyrinth of contradictions, measurements that refused to align, readings that defied geological logic, and discoveries that fractured even the most established timelines. The deeper researchers probed, the more the mounds unraveled into a puzzle with pieces that simply would not fit. Carbon dating, expected to offer clarity, became the first battleground. Samples extracted from upper soil layers produced dates consistent with known indigenous habitation, around 1,000 to 1,500 years old. But deeper layers, closer to the structural cores of the mounds, yielded readings far older, 3,000 years, 5,000, in some cases, older still. Repeated tests confirmed the anomalies. Something, or someone, had constructed the earliest phases of the mounds long before any recognized cultures were present in the region. Attempts to explain these outliers as contamination fell apart when samples taken from sealed interior chambers displayed the same impossible age range. Soil composition added an entirely new layer of confusion. Geologists examining the strata discovered that the mounds appeared to have been built in distinct phases separated by thousands of years, yet the transitions showed no signs of abandonment or cultural disruption. Instead, each phase suggested precision rebuilding, new layers perfectly compacted, aligned, and engineered as if multiple groups across vast spans of time shared the same blueprint. Even stranger, the soil used in some layers originated miles away, hauled from riverbeds and quarries no prehistoric society was believed capable of transporting in such quantities. Ground-penetrating radar only deepened the mystery. Early scans revealed the familiar chambers documented by 19th-century excavators, but newer, high-resolution sweeps exposed something far more dramatic: symmetrical voids arranged in geometric patterns deeper than any shovel has reached. Some structures resembled corridors or domes, others perfectly circular chambers set below the known foundation levels. One radar operator described the layout as architectural confidence bordering on arrogance, a design executed with precision no ancient regional culture was known to possess. Multiple teams confirmed the readings, yet every proposal to excavate deeper was denied or indefinitely delayed. These findings fractured the scientific community. Archaeologists argued that the anomalies pointed to lost cultural phases not yet understood. Geologists insisted the soil layers were too deliberate, too engineered, to reflect natural habitation shifts. Astronomers, brought in after certain mound orientations raised suspicions, noted alignments matching ancient solstice points, lunar standstills, and stellar configurations visible only thousands of years ago. One specialist quietly admitted that a few mounds track celestial cycles most cultures didn't recognize until much later in world history. Conflicting theories soon erupted. Some researchers proposed a forgotten mound-building population isolated within the Carolinas. Others argued for repeated construction by unrelated groups sharing a mysterious inherited knowledge. A few, risking professional backlash, suggested the builders had an advanced understanding of astronomy far beyond their technological era, knowledge comparable to ancient civilizations often credited with early sky mapping. Yet no theory, however bold, managed to reconcile the core contradictions. The carbon dates bent the timeline. The soil layers shattered it. The radar scans turned it inside out. And the celestial alignments, precise to degrees modern tools only recently confirmed, suggested an intelligence at work that should not have existed in prehistoric North America. The mounds were not simply ancient. They were intentional, engineered, and deeply connected to the sky. As researchers pushed their data to its limits, one conclusion surfaced with chilling clarity: the builders understood celestial movements with an accuracy that should have been impossible for their time, and perhaps impossible for ours. Long before scholars pressed the Carolina soil into tidy timelines, the people who lived closest to the mounds carried stories, stories so old they dissolved the boundary between myth and memory. Among the Cherokee, Catawba, and Lumbee, the landscape is not merely inherited ground, it is a living archive shaped by beings who came from the light, walked the early earth, and vanished long before the first recorded tribes set foot in the region. Their legends illuminate a past that official archaeology has never been able to map. Cherokee oral tradition speaks of Anianwea, the first people, who were taught by Nunahai, mysterious star spirits said to step between worlds. These beings were described as tall, radiant figures who emerged from beams of light descending into the valleys. They shaped rivers, carved pathways through forests, and instructed early humans in the ways of the sky. Some stories say the mounds were formed as resting places where the sky touched the earth, sacred thresholds between the world above and the world below. The Catawba tell of the tall watchers, guardians who monitored the horizon from high earthen platforms. They were said to read the heavens as others read tracks on the ground, anticipating shifts in seasons, storms, and celestial events. In their stories, the mounds served as observation points, great markers built not to honor ancestors, but to communicate with forces in the sky. These legends echo unsettlingly with modern discoveries of mound alignments to solstices and lunar cycles. Lumbee tradition adds another layer, tales of earth guardians, beings who emerged from glowing fissures in the mountains and molded the soil as clay. These guardians, neither human nor divine, taught early people to respect the ground because the earth listens when you shape it. Some Lumbee stories speak of earthworks constructed to stabilize energies flowing from the sky, describing patterns that modern researchers now recognize as geometric alignments embedded within the mounds. The legends insist these beings eventually return to the light, leaving only their structures behind. What makes these stories particularly haunting is how closely they parallel myths from ancient cultures across the world. In Mesoamerica, star beings taught humans to count time. In Mesopotamia, visitors from the heavens shaped civilization. In Turkey's Göbekli Tepe, ceremonial mounds align with sky maps older than recorded writing. Across continents and millennia, the same motifs appear: tall watchers, celestial teachers, earth structures built with astronomical precision. Are these shared myths coincidence, or fragments of a global memory? For generations, indigenous elders have insisted that their stories are not allegory but inherited truth, encoded in myth so it would survive after the builders were gone. Modern scholars tend to view these legends as symbolic, yet their consistency, across tribes with little direct cultural exchange, suggests something more tangible. Something that lingers in the soil, in the shape of the land, and in the knowledge embedded within the mounds. Perhaps the myths are not fantasy, but remembrance. Echoes of a time when a lost people, brilliant astronomers, master builders, watchers of the sky, walked these forests and left behind monuments as quiet testimonies to their existence. And if those legends hold even a whisper of truth, then the mounds are not merely archaeological puzzles. They are the last footprints of beings who came from the light. When researchers began mapping the Carolina mound fields with modern instruments, what first appeared as scattered earthworks slowly revealed itself as something astonishing, an immense geometric tapestry woven across the landscape with precision that no simple woodland society was ever believed capable of achieving. Beneath the quiet surface of grass and pine needles lies a mathematical blueprint so intricate, so exact, that it rivals the great ancient sites of the world. The first clues came from solstice studies. Archaeologists noted that several mound axes align perfectly with sunrise on the summer solstice and sunset on the winter solstice, forming a solar corridor that would have required not only generations of observation, but an advanced understanding of celestial drift. Even more astonishing were the lunar alignments. Some mounds point directly toward the major lunar standstill, a phenomenon completing a full cycle only every 18.6 years. The precision needed to track that cycle implies a long-term astronomical tradition, one far older and more complex than anything attributed to early Carolina cultures. The geometry deepens further. When researchers overlaid the mound layouts onto topographic maps, they noticed that certain structures align with distant mountain peaks, sometimes dozens of miles away, forming extended sightlines that act like terrestrial observatories. These alignments mirror engineering principles seen at sites such as Poverty Point, where earthen ridges create massive geometric arcs, and Machu Picchu, where windows and corridors track astronomical events with breathtaking accuracy. Even more surprising, some Carolina mounds share angular ratios found in Neolithic circles of Europe, repeated uses of 23.5 degrees, the tilt of Earth's axis, and geometric patterns matching the golden ratio. This level of precision should not exist here. According to accepted history, the indigenous cultures of this region were small, mobile communities without the population size, infrastructure, or mathematical systems to design continent-scale geodetic networks. Yet the land says otherwise. The recurring angles, the deliberate spacing between mounds, and the near-perfect cardinal orientation suggest a knowledge system that treated the Earth as both canvas and instrument, one capable of encoding astronomy into architecture with a sophistication only rediscovered by modern science. As researchers expanded their surveys, another revelation surfaced. When the mound coordinates were plotted digitally, subtle but unmistakable symmetries emerged. Triangular arrangements mirrored star clusters. Spiral mound layouts echoed the paths of planetary motion. Ratios repeated across sites separated by miles, as though the builders worked from a single master template now lost to time. How could a society without written language or metal tools achieve such geometrical mastery? How did they know which stars would align with which mounds thousands of years later? And why does this knowledge mirror techniques found in civilizations with no recorded connection to ancient North America? The answer, increasingly, points toward a forgotten knowledge system, one shared, inherited, or rediscovered by a people whose identity has vanished from the archaeological record. These mounds were not random constructions. They were instruments. Calculators. Markers meant to track the heavens long before telescopes or mathematics formalized such understanding. Something, or someone, knew exactly what they were building. In the summer of 1934, long before modern agencies began fencing off the Carolina mounds, a small team of researchers arrived under the sponsorship of a wealthy private foundation. Their mission was quiet, discreet, and unlike any excavation previously attempted in the region. Local workers hired to assist recalled that the team seemed less interested in artifacts and more in what lay beneath the deepest layers, areas earlier archaeologists considered unreachable. For several weeks, the dig progressed without incident, until the researchers broke into a chamber that would change everything. Surviving notes, scattered fragments preserved in family attics and estate sales, described the chamber as non-human in form, with walls curving inward like the interior of a shell. The ceiling arched too smoothly to have been shaped by hand tools, and the floor sloped into a recess lined with a dark metallic sheen. The team believed they had uncovered a ceremonial room or burial vault, but nothing inside matched any known cultural style. Among the debris were thin metal fragments unlike copper or iron, light, strangely flexible, and resistant to corrosion. One journal entry, written hastily, simply reads, "This material should not exist here." Then, just as the discoveries grew more extraordinary, the excavation shut down overnight. Local newspapers published a single brief report about the dig, mentioning unusual findings and unique chamber design, but no follow-up stories ever appeared. The dig site was immediately cordoned off. Workers were dismissed without explanation. And according to multiple witnesses, crates loaded with the mysterious metal fragments were quietly transported by truck to a nearby rail depot, where they were labeled under military freight and shipped to an unknown federal facility. No official record of the shipment survives. Families of the researchers were left with conflicting stories. Some were told the project ended due to structural collapse, despite clear testimony that the mound was stable. Others were informed the team had completed its work early, contradicting letters sent home only days before the shutdown describing the most significant discovery yet. Most troubling of all, several field journals vanished from archives, replaced with blank entries or redacted summaries devoid of detail. Only one unsettling question remains: why did a privately funded archaeological project disappear into silence? Whatever the team uncovered in 1934 was deemed too anomalous, too disruptive, or too revealing to remain in public view. And the missing metals, the sealed chamber, and the sudden federal involvement suggest a truth the world was never meant to know. As the evidence mounts, hieroglyphic geometry, impossible dates, missing artifacts, the question deepens beyond archaeology. What are the Carolina Mounds? Scholars offer cautious interpretations, but behind the curtain of academic restraint, forbidden theories dominate quiet conversations. Each explains a piece of the mystery, yet each opens a doorway to even stranger contradictions. The first theory proposes a lost civilization erased by ancient catastrophe. Proponents argue that the mound's earliest construction phases predate known cultures by millennia, suggesting a society advanced enough to shape the land with astronomical precision. Geological records hint at dramatic climate shifts, floods, and seismic events that could have triggered their collapse. If true, the Carolinas may have once harbored a sophisticated culture whose memory survives only in fragmented mythology and the silent contours of earthworks left behind. This solves the timeline anomalies, but leaves us wondering how such a civilization vanished without leaving more recognizable traces. A second theory frames the mounds as astronomical observatories or ritual calendars. Their solstice alignments, lunar pathways, and geometric correlations with distant peaks imply deliberate cosmological engineering. Some researchers see them as instruments, earthbound mechanisms for tracking celestial cycles across generations. Yet this raises another puzzle: how did a society believed to be small and pre-agricultural acquire mathematical knowledge rivaling ancient world civilizations? The calendars make sense, the culture capable of building them does not. A third theory suggests the mounds are burial vaults for an unknown elite class. Early excavators reported anomalous skeletal remains and monumental chambers unlike any tribal mortuary tradition. If these were tombs, they belonged to people with enormous social or spiritual authority, figures who commanded labor, resources, and advanced planning. But why do so many mounds show no evidence of burial at all? And why do the chambers resemble engineered constructs rather than organic ceremonial spaces? Then comes the most controversial theory of all: prehistoric contact with advanced outsiders. This idea, dismissed publicly but whispered privately, attempts to explain the metal fragments, magnetic anomalies, and star-aligned blueprints etched into the land. Legends of beings who came from the light echo suspiciously across tribes. Some astronomers quietly admit the mound orientations align with constellations as they appeared thousands of years ago, suggesting knowledge imparted by someone far more advanced than the region's early inhabitants. Yet this theory raises the biggest contradiction of all: if such beings existed, why did they leave so little behind? Mainstream institutions reject these ideas outright. But the physical anomalies refuse to conform. Carbon dating stumbles. Geometry contradicts expectation. Myth and measurement intersect in ways too precise to ignore. Every theory solves part of the puzzle. None solve the whole. Which leaves us with the uncomfortable truth: whatever the mounds were meant to be, they do not fit within the world we think we understand. Today, the Carolina Mound fields sit beneath a veil far thicker than forest canopy. Over the past few decades, access to many sites has been quietly restricted, not through public announcements or official archaeological protections, but through a patchwork of land purchases by shell corporations with no clear owners. Parcels once open to hikers and researchers now display sudden, "No trespassing" signs. Entire tracts are sealed behind new fencing, and surveillance equipment disguised as environmental monitoring stations watches the woods with unsettling vigilance. Officially, these closures are explained as part of ongoing environmental surveys or erosion control projects. Yet no public reports follow. No restoration crews arrive. Instead, the land simply disappears into silence. Independent research teams attempting to study the mounds find their permits stalled indefinitely, or denied due to vague concerns about ecological disturbance. Meanwhile, locals whisper that men in unmarked trucks arrive at night, taking soil cores and examining the ground with specialized instruments before vanishing by sunrise. Freedom of Information Act requests fare no better. A handful return with entire pages blacked out, offering nothing but bureaucratic shadows. Others come back with the same haunting phrase, "No records responsive to your request." Yet these same, non-existent, records are referenced in older academic citations and newspaper archives, creating a paper trail that leads directly into a wall of denial. Drone footage from independent researchers reveals even more. Beneath years of reforestation and strategic planting patterns, geometric earthworks emerge, massive circles, ridgelines, and triangular formations previously dismissed as natural terrain. Some appear connected by long, straight corridors of raised earth stretching miles across private property. These structures align suspiciously well with the astronomical pathways documented at the publicly accessible mounds. When journalists reach out to experts for comment, most refuse to speak on record. Those who do appear on camera choose their words with surgical caution, their hesitation revealing more than they intend. One archaeologist, his voice trembling, admits that certain findings would be disruptive. Another simply says, some things are easier to ignore. This growing silence has fueled a belief, shared by researchers, locals, and even some museum staff, that the mounds contain information capable of rewriting early American history. If their origins trace to a civilization predating known cultures by millennia, or if they reveal advanced knowledge long dismissed as impossible, then our understanding of the continent's past would shift overnight. And for reasons no agency will officially admit, it appears someone is determined to keep that shift from happening. Across the Carolina foothills, where forests breathe in slow centuries and the hills roll like frozen waves of an ancient sea, the mounds rise as quiet testaments to a forgotten world. Each curve of earth, each buried chamber, each impossible alignment hints at a story too vast to fit within the narrow lanes of accepted history. They are more than archaeological puzzles. More than remnants of a culture relegated to obscurity. The deeper one listens, to the legends, the anomalies, the silences, the more a haunting possibility emerges. The mounds are messages. Echoes left behind by a civilization swallowed by time, yet determined that its memory endure beneath the soil. Science, mythology, and forbidden data converge into an unsettling chorus. Carbon samples refuse to agree with the official timeline. Soil layers show construction phases separated by thousands of years but executed with identical precision. Radar reveals chambers engineered with a sophistication that defies the tools available to early cultures. Tribal traditions speak of star spirits and earth guardians, beings who shaped the land long before humans learned to walk upright. And scattered across these cryptic clues is the unmistakable thread of astronomical mastery: solstice corridors, lunar standstill markers, alignments with distant peaks and ancient skies, all inscribed into the very bones of the earth. Taken together, they point toward a civilization far older than the Mississippians, perhaps older than any recognized culture on the continent. A society that understood the heavens intimately, enough to encode cycles spanning thousands of years. Enough to shape the land not merely as a home, but as a warning. If the mounds are messages, then what were they trying to say? One possibility lies in the sky. The same celestial cycles reflected in the earthworks, precessional shifts, lunar extremes, rare alignments, correspond to periods of global upheaval. Ancient cultures worldwide recorded these cycles as harbingers of climatic change, cosmic disturbances, or catastrophes capable of resetting civilizations. Perhaps the builders endured such an event, a sudden cooling, a great flood, a celestial strike. Perhaps they saw it coming long before it arrived and created these structures as markers, reminders, or guides for those who would live in future epochs. Another possibility lives in the earth itself. Geological records suggest repeated seismic disruptions throughout prehistoric North Carolina, events powerful enough to reshape rivers, swallow settlements, and fracture entire communities. Legends echo these scars, tales of watchers withdrawing into the mountains, guardians returning to the light, and a world reshaped by forces too immense to comprehend. The mounds may represent safe zones, ceremonial refuges, or memorials built not to honor the dead, but to commemorate the moment when the world changed. A deeper, more chilling possibility lingers between myth and anomaly, one that scholars avoid publicly but cannot dismiss in private. If the mound's geometry mirrors global structures, if their mythology aligns with distant civilizations, if their knowledge transcends the capabilities of any known prehistoric society, then perhaps their builders were not solely human as we understand the term. Perhaps they were a culture whose origins stretch beyond the Carolina forests, visitors, watchers, teachers, who left behind these monuments not as tombs or temples, but as warnings for those who would someday inherit the earth. The tragedy woven through every theory is the same: whatever civilization built the mounds did not survive. Whether erased by catastrophe, assimilation, or forces far stranger, they disappeared, leaving only these monumental messages behind. Messages crafted in soil and starlight. Messages encoded in shapes we are just beginning to decipher. And now, as modern technology reveals the precision hidden beneath centuries of growth, as academic institutions retreat from findings they cannot easily explain, and as the land itself continues to whisper its contradictions, one truth stands with increasing clarity: the mounds were never meant to answer our questions. They were meant to remind us of something we have forgotten. A warning. A memory. A prophecy. What the earth remembers is older than history, older than myth, older than anything we have allowed ourselves to believe. And as long as these ancient earthworks stand, silent, enduring, aligning themselves with the same sky their builders once studied, they whisper a truth humanity isn't ready to hear, yet.